Hey guys, Jason here. It's that time of the week again, and we're going to talk about another episode of Only Murders in the Building. Obviously, I'm going to be talking spoilers, so if you haven't watched this week's episode, if you haven't watched Only Murders in the Building up to this point, you've been warned. Let's dive in. First of all, picking up on the heels of last week's major shock of an ending with Mabel stabbing Glitter Guy on the train with her knitting needles. We open the episode from her perspective when we really see it from her perspective. We haven't really done that since episode 2. I think it's interesting that we're kind of seeing it from her perspective. She's a character who, though we've followed along with her from the very beginning, we still don't quite know a lot about. And yes, that's true for all our main characters, but Mabel especially, because everybody talks about how she's so surrounded by death and darkness, and her past is just such a mystery that everybody's like, you know about her, about her past, don't you? But it was nice. It was nice to see it from her perspective, especially after how that episode played out last week. The thing that I thought was the most interesting about this episode, we find her in a mysterious apartment, which turns out is actually Theo Demons' apartment. They were riding the same train, and he saw the attack. He saw the man attack her first, or at least he saw her attacking. He saw the man attacking her, and she stabbed him in retaliation with her knitting needles. She blacked out. He took her home to his apartment where she could, kind of gather herself and, figure out what happened. She realizes that in the scuffle, the Glitter Guy took her bag, which had the matchbook in it. So she has to get it. Now, lucky for her, as this was happening, Glitter Guy dropped a badge when he was running away next to Theo. Theo picked it up and saw it was a security badge from Coney Island. So they immediately decide, we have to go to Coney Island. Well, Mabel decides she has to go to Coney Island. And Theo wants to help her. And the dynamic between the two of them is very interesting, just because they're both characters who's had trauma and death in their backgrounds, in their childhood, in their younger years. Him being a grave robber with his father, and her best friend being pushed off the roof, and her other closest friend being murdered. There are two characters that you never thought would come together in the way that they did, but when they did, you realized, these are two kindred spirits. And I think eventually they could become really good friends. Because I firmly believe that Theo did not push Zoe off the roof, or at least there was no intent behind him pushing Zoe off the roof. It was an accident. And he's trying to find some sort of redemption. It's what his father did that kind of pushed it too far. His father trying to cover it up with blackmail and manipulation that really made things worse. But as a whole, I don't see Theo as a bad person. He just got mixed up in what happened, and he was misled by his father. So they're off to Coney Island, and meanwhile, Charles and Oliver are freaking out because they saw the video, and they're looking everywhere for Mabel, but they can't find her. So who comes to the door but Detective Williams and her infant son, Keith. She was on maternity leave when she rushed back because something was bothering her about the case, and she knew that She clearly knew that Oliver and Charles were hiding something from her. So she's trying to get some answers. And they're trying to, they're trying to play it coy. They're trying to play it safe because they're not sure quite who to trust these days. Makes sense. They're not willing to give up the murder weapon that Oliver should have disposed of a few days ago, but he didn't. It's still in his apartment. So he tries to sneak off to get rid of it when Charles discovers him, and Detective Williams discovers them trying to cover the whole thing up. She's just there trying to help them. This leads to a couple hilarious moments. Oliver trying to doing a chorus line number with her with Detective Williams' baby to get him to feel more comfortable, because he said he might be gassy. And then Detective Williams bursting out, and as she's leaving, bursting out into song from a chorus line. Like, I didn't know what a chorus line was. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. It's one of the reasons why I really love this show. So after all that back and forth, they agree that the knife is best, the murder weapon is best in her hands, that she's going to take care of it. She doesn't want to, and she doesn't. She's really trying to be a good cop and do her job and do it right, because she doesn't want to put the wrong person away. So that's going on with Charles and Oliver. Back at Coney Island, Theo and Mabel are trying to investigate. Now, as they're going along, Theo, they have a moment where there's a few kind of moments between the two of them. One is that Mabel go into the employment, the main office, and trying to check through the files, see if they can find somebody who might seem like they'd have a connection to Bunny somehow. And so Mabel's freaking out, going through all the files and trying to find it, and trying to find something. And she's freaking out. She has to get some air. So Theo puts the files in the trash can and takes the bag. And so it's just like, hey, I've got them all, to try to help her, because she's in no state. She's not in the state of mind to deal with it right now. So he's just saying, like, I've got it, take it for later, which I thought was, that's really nice. And then there's a moment when the anklet around his, the anklet that he's wearing, the battery's dying, so he has to charge for an hour. So Mabel, being at Coney Island and having found out from him that he has never been to Coney Island, because he spent his childhood, robbing dead people with his dad, she decides to plug in a game of whack-a-mole and give him a chance to play. And it's fun to kind of see him really, open up a little bit more than he had ever done previously. And obviously Mabel does not know ASL. I was going to say something else. ASL. I was going to say it again. She does not know ASL. And because Theo is deaf, he can only understand a third of what she's saying. So it's interesting, the communication barrier between the two of them, and yet they still find this connection. After whack-a-mole, they move on to a claw machine, where Theo pulls out a prize that's a plastic green gemmed ring, which reminds them of the ring that Zoe was wearing the night she was pushed off the roof. And that's when Theo kind of is, he reveals to her that he wakes up at, he thinks about it every day, and he wonders if he pushed her or if she just slipped and fell. And Mabel wonders, because she has all these blackouts, if she's capable of doing it, if she even did it, because she can't fully remember. And we find this out because as this is happening, she's flashing back to memories of her father. And that was interesting because in the last episode, she sounded very much like she didn't want to talk about her father with Alice. But in the episode, in a few episodes earlier, she had mentioned to Lucy that her father passed away when she was very young. So we find out through these flashbacks that her relationship with her father is where she got her interest in puzzles and mysteries. Because they would also watch the X-Files together. But what she didn't realize was happening at the same time was that her father was suffering from stomach cancer. And the moving out of town for work and that sort of thing was a cover-up, an excuse, so that she wouldn't see her father dying. And when she found out what was happening, she didn't want to face it. So she blacked that memory out. And that's kind of when she started losing memories, much like how her memory of what happened that night with Bunny is fuzzy, and how she blacked out when she was attacked and she defended herself against Glitter Guy. So after all that, after that kind of interaction with her and Theo, Mabel goes to the bathroom and finds glitter in the sink, and that the killer is actually there, healing his wound, tending to his wounds with the first aid kit. So while he's in the locker room, she slips into a locker to try to hide and accidentally makes a noise that potentially gives away her position. So he starts scanning through lockers. And finally, when he reaches her locker, she swings it open to try to spook him and grabs his bag and runs out. And then her and Theo head off back to the city, where she finds her bag in the killer's bag, or at least Glitter Guy's bag. And she finds that the matchbook is gone, because the matchbook is really the only piece of evidence that points to someone else. Yes, there's the murder weapon that may potentially not have Mabel's fingerprints on it, but just because it doesn't have Mabel's fingerprints on it, it only proves that Mabel didn't do it. It doesn't prove who did it, because the matchbook was the closest thing to prove it was someone else. But she also finds something. She finds her phone and finds out that the guys have been trying to call her and that they're actually waiting for her at the Pickle Diner. So she has Theo take her to the Pickle Diner. It's in that she's kind of realizing that she kind of takes a moment to herself to try to piece everything together and realizes she can't hide from it. She can't be afraid anymore. She can't dissociate. So she takes that moment to go back to that night, and to recollect what happened. And she discovers not only that she didn't do anything, she didn't do it at all, but she saw the killer leave. She saw the killer leave her apartment through the vent in her closet, and she tended to try to help Bunny, but also realizing it was too late. Bunny was gone. And that was a pretty sad moment for me. Pretty sad realization for her, but also for me, that she didn't do it. And it was just heartbreaking. It was devastating. To see that scene where, Bunny is in Mabel's arms, and, it's hopeless, because there's no, she knows it's too late. So they get to the diner, and Theo is still mad at his father, Teddy, and he's been ignoring his calls. But Mabel kind of gives him a bit of advice, which is that, my father died when I was young. I wish I had more time with him. I don't know what's going on with you and your dad, but he's the only dad you've got. Basically, he's the only dad you've got, and you should definitely give him a chance. And Theo sees, when she goes back to the diner, he sees her and Oliver and Charles kind of come together and hug each other in a big circle, and kind of see the love that they share as friends and as sort of their own kind of sort of adoptive family. They have adopted each other as a family. And that gives him the, I guess the okay, the realization, I should talk to my father. So he reaches out to his father. And while they're at the diner, Mabel shows Charles the photograph that she found in the killer's bag, or glitter guy's bag. The picture of Charles and Lucy, realizing, of course, that Lucy's now in danger. So Charles calls Lucy looking for her. She's at Charles's apartment. And just as we see that, the lights go out, the phone's cut off, and there's a blackout. So, that was definitely an interesting way to end the episode, much like the previous episode, with just something, crazy that's about to happen, and what's going to happen next. This season so far is, as it stands now, is, they've definitely upped the ante this season, and I'm really happy with, what's going on, where this is going. So we've presumably met the killer. We still don't know who that is. We've got 3 more episodes left. I still have my theories about Howard. I'm not saying he's the killer. I just see there's something fishy going on. Much like how I was suspicious of Alice. Not that she was the killer, but there was something fishy going on. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. One thing I really liked about the opening this week was the Easter egg of the puzzle pieces kind of etched into the side of the building. I thought that was fun. That was fun and cool. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So let me know what you thought of this week's episode of Only Murders in the Building down in the comments. If there's any clues I might have missed, any suspects you might think. There is actually a website now called whokilledbunny.com where you can guess who you think the killer is. And I'm looking at that list and I'm not sure. I don't think the killer's on that list. I think none of them are the killer. But it's possible that one of those folks is involved. So who knows? We'll see. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell to get updates on all my future videos, especially my Only Murders in the Building videos. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.